thank you everybody for being here. My name is Mrs. Michelle May, and I'm the head of section for GrandChêne Section Internationale. And you are?
And I'm Jody Sokan, admissions manager for the section. So I'm often the first link to any of your questions.
Yes, some of you have already heard from Jody, I think. That's the key. So we have our contact information here for you to go ahead and note if you don't already have it. Of course, it's available on our website. Admissions@grandchaene.org is for Mrs. Sokan, and then the telephone number as well is for her to contact her. Email is probably best. For the moment, we've had a telephone incident, and you'll have a new phone by the end of the week.
Exactly. So it'll be available by Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah. So email definitely for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for connecting this evening. Yeah, we'll go ahead with a presentation. Please just note that we're recording this webinar, so that it's available tomorrow. It's interesting.
Yes, we're going to go to the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's much later.
Yes, we're not there at all. I'm not too sure what's going on tonight.
So that's number one.
Yes.
And there's number two.
See here. So this is the content of what will be presented to you tonight. It's our DNA, our locations, so where our two colleges are located. So they're located in Les Saint-Cloud and Noisy-le-Roi, and we'll talk a bit more about them. And then at a later part of the webinar, we'll talk about the Lycée Corneille. Then our offer, what the program is about, and also we'll tell you a bit more about the fact that we're not just a program, but we're also a community. And once we have explained all this, we will then explain how to apply to our program. So this is the content of tonight. Michelle,
all right, so my turn. Our DNA. So what we're about, you may or may not be already familiar with international sections that are part of Éducation Nationale's accredited program. We are integrated into the French public schools, but we are a fee-paying section run by an association. And it's a parent-based association, a parent-led association. We're going into, or we are in our 22nd year. And we've recently changed our logo. We haven't changed what we do, but we've changed from a more generic name of just Section Internationale to GrandChêne Section Internationale, because what this does is it lets us kind of have an umbrella title or name for all of our partner schools and our different offers, our integrated programs, as well as our external programs and Wednesday school for the primary level. All of the coursework is done in English. We have all native speakers for teachers. We're all from different parts of the Anglophone or the English-speaking world, from the UK, I obviously from the United States. We have a teacher from Canada. We have a teacher from Ireland too, maybe from Ireland. And of course, everyone's teaching in their native language. Their education has been in their home country for the most part, and the content is age-appropriate language. So what a middle school student would be doing in the States, the vocabulary, the level of literature, etc., is all to the same standard in our programs here in the GrandChêne Section Internationale. The academic ability is important. Students should be able to deal with an additional part to their curriculum. It is not enormous numbers of hours, but it is some hours in addition to their regular coursework in the French system. We have 15 teachers, 1 reading assistant, and 4 administrative staff. So myself, Madame Sokan, we have our HR operations person, and we have an accountant, of course, and she keeps us all on our best behavior. Over 283 students this year in our programs.
So going from Grande Section up to Terminale, so spread out over all those different levels. This gives you a brief idea as to where the collèges are located. So you will first, one of our sites is the Collège La Quintigny in Noisy-le-Roi, which you see here.
I'm taking my arrow over there.
Thank you.
I'm going
Exactly.
to Noisy.
So the catchment area of the Collège La Quintigny is Noisy-le-Roi, Bailly, and Rennes-Moulins. However, some derogation every year possible. We have a certain number of derogation given by the head of the school and confirmed by the inspection académique. So it helps to live in the catchment area, but it's not a requirement. It just helps in terms of priority. So spots given in priority to people living in the catchment area, and then to families living in the 78, and lastly in the 92. The same rules applies to the Collège Pasteur, which is in La Salle-Saint-Cloud. The Collège Pasteur in fact, there's more than one collège in La Salle-Saint-Cloud, so it has a catchment area which is around the collège. So it doesn't encompass the whole of the town, only a part. However, again, derogations are possible. So families living outside of La Salle-Saint-Cloud, outside even of the Yvelines, are given every year spots. Again, it's the head of the school that confirms how many spots can be given to families living outside of the catchment area. It's less often families come to us, asking about this derogation. It is a lot of families have anxiety over it. In primary, it is a subject. In college, it's less so. It doesn't mean it's a confirmation, but it's usually we have a good success rate, let's say. Yeah.
I want to just point out on this map that we do have, you can see if you're familiar with the Paris area, the border kind of between Les Yvelines and Hauts-de-Seine. And so that's really a kind of an important one because it is different departments. But we do have a good success rate, particularly for those families living within Les Yvelines with derogation. It's also possible if a family resides in Hauts-de-Seine, which is a different department. So it's not to worry. I just wanted to point out the proximity.
And just also to tell you, sorry, you're right, just to give you a brief idea, because some families, they live abroad, they don't really know where to settle. Just really quickly, Noisy-le-Roi is a town which is has a bit more of a villagey feeling. It has a tram that connects to an RER that leads to Paris, so it's a bit less of a direct connection, but it's
but it is connected.
It is connected.
Yeah.
It's a very nice town, very active, lots of sports available, very nice community. La Salle-Saint-Cloud is a bigger town, more varied.
Has the train.
Directly, exactly. So far, it has also maternelle up to lycée programs, so that it's
in
often
the same town.
Exactly. It's often favored by families, but in Noisy-le-Roi, we've opened a primary program this year with a split CM1, CM2. So slowly it's building up as well. So the two choices are valid. It depends what type of community of
what you're looking for.
What you're looking for, exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to say a few words, first of all, about the Collège Pasteur, which is in La Salle-Saint-Cloud. And the Collège Pasteur, we have all 4 levels that have students integrated in 6e, 5e, 4e, and 3e. The 5e class is quite numerous this year. And so for that one, we have 2 groups, but the other levels, we have 1 group. So the children, when they come together in their international group, they come from 2 different national classes to make up a smaller international group. And then here, down in the bottom right, we can see our classroom, our designated classroom, which allows us at the college level to have our work on the walls, reinforced English and history, geography texts, maps, etc. Because, of course, the classroom is also part of the learning environment and is part of a learning tool. But this gives us an idea kind of where the school is located in La Salle-Saint-Cloud.
And it has also an open day in April.
They do. Yes.
So if you ever you would like to come and visit the site, you will be able to do so in April. We will publish the date, the exact date.
Okay.
I believe we have,
Ghana.
yes, I think we have Mr. Massé on the call. Monsieur Massé, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Yes, yes.
Ah, parfait. Merci beaucoup de vous connecter. C'est
Bonsoir,
très
monsieur.
simple. Merci. Donc,
Hello.
je veux juste vous présenter. Mr. Massé is the head of Collège La Quintini, and he's agreed to participate to our webinar tonight to explain a bit more about the Collège La Quintini.
Donc, Monsieur Massé, je vais mettre les slides avec les photos de votre collège.
Okay. Donc, hello everybody. My English is not perfect, but bon. I'm the director. C'est le terme, c'est la traduction de principal, comme on dit d'ailleurs. Je sais pas comment on dit.
The principal in American, it would be the principal.
Yes. Of Collège de la Quintini, 630.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Pupils, élèves.
Mhm.
And a college very attractive with this international section and sportive sport section, tennis,
Yes.
foot.
Mm.
Et bon, je vais parler en français, vous traduirez s'il faut.
Oui,
Voilà,
oui, bien sûr.
Bon, c'est un collège très agréable où les élèves disent d'année en année, moi ça fait 3 ans que je suis là, qu'ils sont contents de venir, que c'est un collège serein, tranquille et en même temps avec énormément de projets sur
Ouais.
l'écologie, le développement durable, la lutte contre le harcèlement, le fait de rendre autonomes et responsables les jeunes, les aider à progresser, et on écoute aussi les demandes individuelles d'aménagement. Voilà. Donc un collège très ouvert, cadrant et performant d'un point de vue résultat scolaire. Et puis agréable et lumineux, avec une cour qui a été refaite et qui est très jolie. Donc
Oui.
j'engage tous ceux qui nous écoutent et qui se posent des questions et qui habiteraient dans le secteur ou qui compteraient habiter proche de Noisy-le-Roi à nous rejoindre, parce que c'est vrai que c'est un lieu, ce sont 2 villes, hein, Noisy-le-Roi et Bailly, proches de la Selle Saint-Cloud, qui sont des villes très agréables. Moi, j'y vis depuis 3 ans, et petit village avec des commerces de proximité et tout ce qu'il faut.
Mm.
Voilà, après, je vous laisse parler, mais on a en gros un peu moins de 50 élèves dans la section internationale, de la 6e à la 3e.
Oui.
Et donc, il y a encore un peu de place, pas sur tous les niveaux. Je crois que sur les 4e, l'an prochain, c'est plus incertain, mais sur les niveaux 6e, 5e et 3e,
C'est sûr.
il y a des places. Voilà. Donc après, moi, je suis prêt à répondre aux questions des personnes qui sont connectées.
Après, on peut voir aussi à la fin, oui, si on a des questions, on peut les ramener à vous aussi.
Oui, de toute façon, oui. Là,
Oui.
je reste un peu connecté avec vous, mais dans une dizaine de minutes, il va falloir que je m'en aille. Mais
D'accord. Oui, c'est gentil.
Oui, on va peut-être, oui, on
So-
a un temps de questions-réponses à la fin.
Oui, je pense
Et,
que oui, on va faire les questions-réponses à la fin pour tout le monde, parce que des fois aussi, il y a des choses qui se répètent.
Voilà.
je vous laisse
Mais
continuer votre diaporama, en tout cas.
si on
Oui.
voit en tout cas des questions qui vous concernent, on arrêtera notre
Oui.
présentation pour vous faire participer à
Oui.
nouveau. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Massé.
Alors, il y a Madame Semeria qui nous a joint aussi. Bonsoir, Madame. C'est
Bonsoir.
c'est le proviseur du lycée. Donc, elle est un peu en avance.
Ah,
Mais c'est bien quand même.
je peux attendre,
On
si vous
comprend.
voulez, je peux attendre. C'est pas un problème. Hein. Donc,
Ça va, toi, si on attend un peu, on continue?
Il n'y a pas de souci. Maintenant que j'ai trouvé
Ok.
comment vous entendre, c'est bon. Hein.
Sup-
Voilà.
Super. Mais si vous voulez, vous pouvez quand même. Comment on veut faire?
Oui, j'ai un peu peur qu'on vous fasse patienter un peu
Oui,
trop longtemps.
d'accord. Alors, si vous voulez, Madame Simeria, si vous pouvez présenter le lycée, comme ça, au moins, c'est dans notre enregistrement et on va pas vous garder trop longtemps.
Comme vous voulez. Donc,
D'accord.
le lycée Corneille, c'est 1500 élèves, hein, et étudiants. hein, sur 2 sites, mais pour la section internationale, il se trouve sur le pôle général, hein. Un grand lycée, il y a à peu près 1200 élèves. Les élèves de la section internationale sont tous réunis dans une même classe et c'est cette classe qui monte de la seconde à la première et à la terminale, hein, et ils sont effectivement mélangés après parce qu'ils ne font pas une classe à eux tout seuls, hein, ils ne sont pas une trentaine d'élèves, hein. Là, on en a un peu plus cette année, ils sont à peu près une vingtaine, hein, si je ne me trompe pas, c'est ça?
Oui, c'est ça.
En seconde, et donc forcément, on a des classes de 34 élèves, 32, 34, et donc on a d'autres élèves qui sont associés aux élèves de la section internationale, hein. Les équipes enseignantes travaillent avec les enseignants de la section internationale, hein, pour la pédagogie, hein, pour pouvoir répondre aux exigences du baccalauréat, hein. Ce sont des élèves qui réussissent brillamment, hein, de la section inter, hein, qui pour le moment du moins, mais il n'y a pas de raison que ça change, sont des élèves qui travaillent régulièrement et sont vraiment très accompagnés par l'association et les professeurs de l'association, mais aussi les professeurs du lycée. Alors, les enseignants du lycée aiment beaucoup les élèves de la section internationale, hein, voilà, ils participent effectivement aux projets qui sont menés et mis en place par la section, mais aussi par des projets qui peuvent être amenés par d'autres professeurs qui participent à cette classe de section internationale. Donc, on est toujours ravis d'accueillir des élèves, ces élèves et les enfants de la section internationale. On entend parler toutes les langues dans les couloirs, hein, et c'est vraiment un vrai bonheur et un vrai plaisir. Et on échange énormément avec les représentants de l'association, hein, souvent Madame May, hein, jeudi, enfin voilà, viennent nous voir et échangent dès qu'il y a un questionnement, une interrogation, hein, voilà, ouais. C'est très très fluide et c'est extrêmement intéressant. On a toujours beaucoup beaucoup de plaisir à travailler avec l'association. Voilà. Est-ce que vous avez des questions auxquelles je n'aurais peut-être pas répondu, ou vous avez des points que vous souhaitez que j'aborde plus facilement? On a une super cantine. Voilà, ça c'est aussi important. Un super cantine. Ah, voilà. Il y a un foyer des élèves avec un piano. On a
Oui,
une cafétéria. Voilà. Enfin,
il y a le baby-foot,
il y a des
voilà.
baby-foot.
Et puis
Voilà.
il y a des clubs UNICEF, le club UNICEF.
Oui.
Voilà.
Vous avez aussi le club, c'est quoi vous avez un magasin solidaire, c'est ça?
Alors, on
Oui.
a un magasin solidaire qui va venir assez régulièrement. On a une chorale aussi, auquel
Oui.
les élèves et les enseignants peuvent participer. On a des clubs sportifs, hein, où on a
Oui.
des rencontres de badminton entre les enseignants et les élèves. Donc, c'est un établissement où il fait
Oui.
bon vivre, hein.
Oui.
Ça peut paraître important parce que c'est gros, mais pas si gros que ça, en fait, hein, voilà.
Oui.
Il y a un climat scolaire, c'est pas parce que c'est mon établissement, évidemment, je le défends, mais c'est un climat scolaire qu'on aime bien. Nos élèves sont globalement gentils, voilà. Et ça, c'est
Oui.
important, hein. On a voilà, des temps forts dans l'établissement auxquels ils participent, et quel que soit, on a des classes euro, on a des classes bi-euro, on a une classe internationale, on a aussi une classe pour des élèves pour qu'ils raccrochent, voilà. Donc on a une mixité qui est toujours très intéressante en termes de dynamique d'établissement, hein, et en termes de climat scolaire. Voilà. Donc,
Oui.
bon, je
On
pense
a
que…
une question qui peut vous intéresser, Madame Smeria, et peut-être Monsieur Massé aussi. On a un parent qui demande pour les élèves qui arrivent de l'étranger en troisième et en première, est-ce qu'ils arrivent à s'intégrer?
Oui, oui, alors, ils arrivent à s'intégrer d'abord parce que sur les premières, comme c'est un petit groupe, j'allais dire, ils sont vite intégrés dans la classe.
Oui.
hein, avec les autres élèves de la section internationale, mais aussi les autres élèves. Et globalement, on n'a pas eu de difficulté d'intégration d'élèves. Ce qu'on a comme difficulté, c'est comme tous les élèves, hein, voilà, quand ils se disputent, etc. Mais ça, c'est valable pour n'importe quel élève, qu'il soit de la section inter, euro ou non. Hein, voilà.
Voilà.
Donc, c'est pas, ils ont des vies de lycéens. Voilà, ils ont tout à fait des
Voilà.
vies de lycéens. Voilà. Tout à fait classique. Et on n'a pas de. On fait très attention à nos élèves. Hein. On a une vie scolaire qui est vigilante. On a 2 CPE sur le pôle général. Il faut très, très attention aux élèves, au bien-être. On a des
Ah oui.
surveillants qui sont assez proches des élèves. Donc, du coup, s'ils n'arrivent pas à communiquer, à nous dire tout de suite, bon, on a des relais, mais les difficultés qu'on a pu rencontrer, mais qui sont parfois des difficultés parce que je ne m'entends pas avec le copain, la copine, ça revient, viennent par les professeurs de la section inter parce qu'ils sont très proches de nos lycéens.
Ouais.
Je-
Ouais. Ah bah merci, madame.
J'en profite pour
Euh,
rajouter, puisque vous parliez collège,
oui.
je dis bonjour à Catherine. Maria. Et en fait, c'est pareil, la notion de bien-être au collège comme au lycée, c'est la même. Les élèves de section, ils sont souvent entre eux, mais en fait, ils ont beaucoup de contacts avec les autres, puisqu'on partage les classes. C'est jamais une classe complète de section internationale. Et finalement, le mix se fait très bien. Et en même temps, c'est rassurant pour les jeunes qui arrivent, s'ils maîtrisent pas tellement le français, parce qu'il y en a certains qui maîtrisent un peu moins le français que d'autres, mais ils apprennent très vite, hein, les gamins, beaucoup plus que nous adultes. Et en l'espace de 1 mois, 2 mois, ça y est, les repères sont trouvés, les copains, et on ne parle pas que anglais et on développe. Et on a des exemples, et je suis persuadé que c'est pareil au lycée, de gamins qui se sont intégrés à une vitesse folle et avec des résultats exceptionnels. Mais c'est vraiment une plus-value pour nous, les élèves de section internationale, et le fait qu'on ne parle pas que le français dans un collège et qu'on parle d'autres langues, qu'on ait d'autres projets, parce qu'il y a plein d'actions que vous faites avec des voyages un peu spécifiques, et tout ça, vous en parlerez sûrement après, contribue à faire quelque chose qui est à part, mais qui est en même temps dans l'établissement. Qu'on soit au collège ou au lycée, je pense que c'est la même chose. Donc oui, il s'intègre très bien. Il n'y a pas de difficulté. Vraiment.
Ouais.
Je vais vous
Ouais.
abandonner dans 5 minutes, et puis s'il y a d'autres questions, de toute façon, vous me les
C'est
relirez.
gentil. Oui, merci. On a juste une question et en fait, c'est parce que je fais l'audio par mon téléphone, j'ai pas mon calendrier. C'est quoi la date de les portes ouvertes à la Cantini?
Alors, c'est en mai, je vais vous dire tout de suite, parce que je la connais plus par cœur non plus. C'est le samedi 24 mai. Samedi 24 mai matin, de 9h à 12h. Voilà.
Ouais,
Il faut que les
parfait.
parents viennent nombreux et ils verront. Et normalement, les
Oui,
portes ouvertes du lycée, c'est en janvier-février, c'est ça?
18
Tout à fait,
janvier.
compris.
Voilà.
18 janvier, on va envoyer toutes les affiches pour nos collègues principaux de collège et puis même les proviseurs de lycée. On fait à la fois le forum des métiers et la porte ouverte de l'établissement le 18 janvier de 9h à midi.
oui. Et là, c'est la date pour le lycée, c'est le 10 janvier. Il faut qu'on se
18.
rappelle.
18 janvier. 18 janvier.
18 janvier.
Oui.
Faut qu'on se
Maybe I'll
rappelle.
say this in English because
Yes.
that's also
Go for it.
great. They have an incredible day, to be honest, because for the past 3 years, it's always an amazing day. It's the open day at the Lycée Corneille. It's on the 18th of January. I invite you, if you're available, if you are in France, to come and visit. You will have really a good idea of what the Lycée is about, with the different projects, with they really go, the whole way.
It's a whole show. It's
They
a whole
include
thing.
the students also. They are ambassadors and they also welcome families.
Yeah.
So it's really a nice day to go and visit the lycée and have your own personal opinion about it.
I think we should keep moving because
Should we answer to this question? Because
Yes, go for it.
Quite an important
Yes.
one. Madame Semeria, cette question vous concerne. Je ne sais pas si vous avez une réponse ou pas. C'est concernant, vous savez, la réforme sur le brevet obligatoire. Est-ce que cela concerne les élèves qui viendraient de l'étranger? Est-ce que ce brevet reste obligatoire pour les élèves venant de l'étranger?
Alors, ça, c'est la bonne question à laquelle on ne peut pas répondre parce que nous n'avons pas la réponse du ministère.
Voilà.
Donc, déjà, pour les élèves, Christophe, c'était sur les mêmes visios que moi. Pour le moment, ça a été reporté. Donc, ce ne sera pas à la rentrée prochaine, c'est sûr. Et, voilà. Et,
Dans 2 ans.
Ouais, dans 2 ans.
2027.
Donc, on n'a pas d'informations. Donc, pour l'instant, ça continue comme ça. Voilà.
Très bien. Ouais. Donc, faut venir l'année prochaine, madame, et vos enfants.
C'est ça.
Comme ça, c'est bon. Merci,
Très
merci,
bien. Merci
à vous deux.
Oui.
On va peut-être
On va
continuer.
reprendre.
D'accord.
We'll go back to
On
where
vous
we
abandonne
were.
alors. Ouais.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, Madame Semaria.
Merci, bonne
Bonne soirée à tout le monde et on
Merci.
répondra aux questions que vous nous renverrez, comme ça vous pourrez envoyer les réponses.
Parfait.
Oui,
Voilà.
c'est promis. Merci
à vous
beaucoup.
Un
deux.
bisou.
Merci.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Okay, so this was our little French interlude.
Yes.
Then now back to English. Exactly.
So we have at the collège, and focusing on collège again, we have an integrated program, as we described, at 2 different sites, the Collège La Cantini in Noisy-le-Roi and the Collège Pasteur in La Saint-Cloud. All of our teachers are native English speakers. We do pride ourselves on small class sizes. We try to aim for a maximum of 18 students. For example, as I mentioned, there are 2 groups this year in the 5e class in Pasteur. And because we have, I think it's 21 students, we've divided it into 2 groups. And so we have a group of 10 and a group of 11. So this is what I mean by small class sizes, is we don't really want to go beyond certainly 18 or certainly not 20 for students that we welcome in our classes. So we have a total of 118 students in the college level on both combined on the 2 sites taken together. And we have 100% success on the brevet, and actually, I think even last year we had almost 98% mention. So it was a very good year. The college program is 4 hours of English language and literature within the week, and 2 hours of history and geography. So the 4 hours of English language and literature is in 2-hour blocks, usually depending on the timetable. So students will have, for example, 2 hours of English language and literature on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then they might have their 2 hours of history geography on Mondays, for example, or Fridays. We do offer the Brevet International at the end of troisième. We have a trip to an Anglophone country, an English-speaking country, in 5e and 4e every other year. So that way we have 2 groups that get to go, and we organize the trip every other year so that during their college years, they get to go on at least 1 overnight trip with their classmates and their section teachers. Boy, qualified English speaking teachers, I guess that's important. And we do have a French immersion program, primarily at Pasteur, exclusively at Pasteur, in fact, which they call UPE2A. And the French immersion program is for those people coming back to France, usually from an expatriation, or who really may have never had French in some cases. And the students can do the French immersion program first and then integrate the section. And it really depends on the ability and the language progress of the student, how quickly they do that integration to the section.
Yeah, and we've spoken to Mrs. Hilary last week, who confirmed that even she's making sure that some families might know that the French immersion program called UPE2A is normally available, well, is available just for a year. However, Mrs. Hilary, who's the head of Collège Pasteur, has decided that she will support additional French classes for students who would need that additional time and additional time to get to where they should be in French by giving a few additional hours outside of this French immersion program. So, you know, for some families who might be already familiar with the program, if you're outside of this 1 year and you've been back in France for longer than a year, it's still possible to have additional French classes for your child if he's still struggling in French.
Okay.
Yeah, so the reasonable fees, I won't go too much into detail, but as you will see, they are reasonable. The reason why is that straight from the start, when the association was created 22 years ago, the idea was to make this program available to as many people, to make it available to everyone, to families with multiple children and to families who had lesser means than certain international schools. So this is the reason why that is really one of our objectives, is to maintain reasonable fees every year, although they will slightly increase, but they will remain reasonable in the sense that we're trying to cover charges and the cost of the teachers, obviously. You will see that in Première Terminale, there is an increase in the fees. This is because there are 8 hours of section classes in Première Terminale, with 4 hours of English literature and 4 hours of history or geography, plus, so this is why the increase.
The difference. It's a surprising difference.
Exactly.
But it's for additional hours during the week.
Yeah, so just so you'll see in detail that there is the tuition fee, and then we have the book fees and the membership. So the membership applies, it's just for one family. It's per family and not per child.
Right, to the association.
To the association, exactly.
So I do have questions that have been coming up. I'm tracking them. We're going to get back to them. But we have another invited guest who should be with us, I believe. Mr. Pera, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Excellent. So Mr. Pera is one of our language and literature teachers who teaches at both the Collège Pasteur and at the Lycée. And he's kindly extended his teaching day or extended his work day to be with us this evening. So I'll leave it with you.
Absolutely. Well, first off, hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Pera. I am the English teacher, as we already said, at Collège Pasteur and Lycée GrandChêne. And I teach 5e, 3e, seconde, and terminale. So I jump around a little bit. Talking about the collège, the focus here kind of fits in with this idea of a spiral curriculum, if you've heard of it, where a lot of ideas are introduced at the base level in CZM, and they're continuously reinforced as we continue to progress towards 3e, towards lycée. So at the CZM level, of course, a lot of basic skills are reintroduced or introduced for the first time to students, including some grammatical rules, as well as ideas of spelling and things like that, just to reinforce what they learned before collège. But also they start to learn the transition into collège and start to have more self-responsibility in terms of assignments and just keeping themselves organized. Some of the novels that we do include Frankenstein. I see Out of My Mind there, as well as The Westing Game, a great mystery novel. And that also includes plays and poems and a variety of literature and multimedia that can include videos and newspaper entries. Moving on to 5e, something I know quite well that I teach, we start to focus a little more on the complexities of language as well as their purpose. What is the reason an author writes? Is it for transactional reasons? Is it for creative reasons? And one of the novels that I work on with my class is something called The Arrival, which is actually a really interesting project that the students work on, because The Arrival is a book that has no words. It's a picture book. It's a large picture book with very interesting themes. What the students end up doing is working on the book to write what the story would be in words, as well as working on different types of, let's say, documents or different types of writing exercises based on what the character is doing in the story. For example, in one chapter, he is looking for a job, and so students actually learn how to start working on a resume and cover letter. I know it's a little early, but nonetheless, they're learning how to write for a specific audience. And these are the things that students start to think about that are really useful for their life in general. We also do cover another novel that I'm a big fan of, and I think is a big hit with the kids, is The Giver, a dystopian novel very popular with teenagers. And in this grade level, we also, of course, focus quite a bit on creative writing, descriptive writing. We do some poetry, we write journals. We write journals every day, in fact. And we start to also think about how can we start formulating essay writing with PEE writing and PEEL writing, which is a way of organizing information into paragraphs. Finally, with quatrième, I skipped quatrième for a second because I don't teach it, is a continuation of the skills learned in 5e and 6e. We continue to focus on the critical skills as well as start to look at more abstract ideas, including critical analysis, and looking at what is the purpose, the author's purpose for choosing a literary device or choosing a specific word. What is the meaning of that word, right? This is all things that you need to start looking at language at a more abstract level to start to comprehend. And so in 4e, it's really when we start working on that. And then that pushes us into 3e, where the focus really does become on the usage of language by the author and its purpose. Why does the author choose to write this way? Why use this type of language? Because we start at this level to prepare for the exams called the IGCSE, which are the British International type of exams. With those exams, students need to start focusing on analyzing literature, not just explaining what they're seeing, but again, looking behind those curtains and understanding the author's purpose, the craft of writing. So there is a slight less focus on creative writing, but more on analytical writing, on essay writing, on looking at and breaking down a poem or an excerpt from a novel. So as you can see, the college program is something that starts with more concrete information, concrete learning that moves forward to abstract, as of course the students develop and become more have the capacity to perhaps pick up on the finer, subtle details of literature. So that is the college program in a nutshell.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Of
Steve.
course.
Right. We're going to hold you. You're going to stay with us,
Yes.
please, for Lycée. Thank you.
Of course.
So I teach, I'm going to go and narrate the next slide for history geography. I teach history geography at the Lycée, not at the collège, but I have done in the past. So the collège program is constructed similarly to the Lycée program in that we set the foundations in the early couple years, and then we build up to the more abstract and more analytical approach to history and geography. And students are often surprised at something that they think is very much rote memorization, definitions and dates, and yet the way we teach it in the section is a little more interpretive, a little more based on their own inquiry into historical and geographical topics. So we do focus as well on critical analysis, on source work, on giving students, trusting them with historical and geographical sources that they then can interpret and use to make an argument, to make a point. We work and build on the essay writing skills. We use PEEL to a similar effect, to structure an essay, to structure a paragraph that has a main focus, not just here's everything I know about William the Conqueror, but to say here is why William was successful in the Battle of Hastings, for example. And also grammar and vocabulary are reinforced through the history geography program. Our content is based on the national program. So the French defined national program is taught with the English spin, with the section spin on it. So based on the French programs in 6e, we have the Romans in Britain and Introduction to Geography. In 5e, we look at the British Middle Ages, which parallels the French Middle Ages that's taught on the French side. And development. We look at development, sustainable development, how we measure development, why some are left out of economic development in geography. In 4e, we look at the revolutionary era. So we look at, while the French Revolution is going on, my favorite example is Louis is selling off the Louisiana territories and the Americans are buying it. And so we end up with a lot of states and he ends up with some cash. But the students tend to really appreciate the comparison and to see that history is these facts, but that they have different meaning in different contexts. And globalization for geography. And then in 3e, we get to the 20th century. And so the students explore both world wars, the Cold War, how globalization has accelerated in the 20th century, etc. And in 3e, one of our trips It's an overnight. We go to Normandy. We go to the Caen Memorial and the landing beaches. It's a quick kind of up and back trip, but we said it's just too perfect and too interesting to miss out as a troisième student to actually going where some of these key events of the 20th century took place. So we have that as a special couple days for our troisièmes. All right. Our community.
Yes, so beyond the classroom,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Beyond being a program, a pedagogical program, we also are a community, meaning that families from the section will organize events outside of school. So we organize, so there are events organized, led by families, like potluck dinners. They will have
Parents' night out.
yeah, exactly. What do they organize? Halloween parties, all sorts of different events for the students to meet up, and for also the parents to get to know each other. But we also, some of the events are led by GrandChêne itself, like the back to school picnic, which takes place just before the school starts again in September, which is really a nice event because everyone from the school comes, and from the various schools comes, and like this the children get to know each other before the school actually starts. So it's really a nice event. And then we also organize a quiz night, which should take place, I think, in March this year. Yeah. So yeah, it's we have a nice community, which can also, we have a newsletter which comes out 3-4 times a year. I can send it to you if you'd like, and it really shows the different events that are taking place
and what our students are up to.
Exactly.
A quick answer and elaboration on the Normandy trip for troisième. It's just the international students, and the reason for that is that because we're trying to take them away for a little bit of English immersion for those families perhaps that speak French at home. We try to take just the international students so that we oblige them to speak more English, to hear more English, to work in English. So that trip is it's every year, but it is for the troisième students that are in the section. All right. So we can now answer more of your questions. I'm going to give us the ones that I have kind of accumulated here. I had a question about a typical student day. We can send you a typical timetable. We are certainly willing to share that. The lycée is more varied, I would say, than the collège. Lycée starts usually at 8 a.m. And continues probably until 5 for most students. Some do start a little bit later on some days, and some do finish earlier on some days. But they have a very, very full timetable. I think last year I counted, and some of our terminal students have as many as 35 hours a week, which they like to remind us that that's more than their parents' work, because they also have homework. So they have very full schedules. The collège is, of course, a little bit less. I think most classes start about 8:30 and finish about 4:30. But there would be a couple days a week that students, even at the collège level, would continue until 5:30. Both of our collège, however, have classes on Wednesday only in the morning. So they do have that brief break in the middle of their week. Yes, all of our teachers are native speakers, and the English level that we're aiming for is B1, B2. So I had a question earlier about, if the student has a good level of English, but doesn't have necessarily an Anglophone parent, they are certainly willing to sit the test. What we do is we vet the applications beforehand and try to give parents and families an idea if we recommend taking the test or not. Usually students have had academic English in their background at some point before they sit our test. So it might be that they've been in school abroad. It might be that they've followed an English language program in France or in Singapore or wherever. So does this mean B1, B2 level allows the students to maintain their proficiency? Oh, absolutely. And maybe to go beyond, because it is more than just a oral program. It is something that they can continue to work on and develop. As Mr. Paris said, in particular, it's also those skills, the linguistic skills, the meanings of words, building the vocabulary, working with vocabulary, what is behind the use of the language, as well as the culture. I think, yes, a student, again, we're going to take the application and vet the application beforehand, but it would not be a deterrent. I wouldn't say just based on a B1 grade B, I wouldn't say, that excludes a student from applying. And we have had students move from collège, not having been abroad, who move into lycée and are very successful. So it really does depend, as with many things, our skill sets are not always taught. We also have things that are encouraged in our environment, even if it is from another language, but it does tend to form or shape the student's ability to learn and use languages. Let's see, trip lengths. So the 5e, 4e trip that we have taken the last couple of years, and it's planned for next year as well, for 5e and 4e next year, has been to Ireland. They've gone to Galway, and then in the past, they've also had trips to London. We shifted to Galway for a couple of reasons. One, we felt that most families would probably have time or have the opportunity to take their children to London. And so London was closer, easier, and probably more likely to happen anyway, whereas a trip to Ireland was less likely. And it also allowed us to organize host family stays. And so the children really get to plunge into the West Coast Irish dialect and accent. And so we challenge them to work on their language within a host family as well. We had the question about UPE2A, if it's available for a current CZM.
Yes, that's a good question. Is it available for a current CZM? The program has started, so I think it's going into too much specific. I think it's better that you give me a call, because the family who's concerned, because you have to go through the CIO, it might have to be approved by another entity than ourselves. So we need to talk about specifics. What it is for sure is that additional support in French can be available for a current CZM student. Being in a UPE2A program, this has to be talked, and we have to see the specifics. I cannot answer just like this.
Okay, so that's one to get back to Mrs. Socan on.
Yes.
Let's see, do current students currently in the integrated test? Yes.
Yes, we test all of the students.
Yes.
Whether they come from a program or outside of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So in CZM, it's a good question, because in CZM we test everyone. So we start from scratch.
Yes.
We're very pleased actually, because last year all of the section students who applied to CZM and sat the test, they all passed.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of our teachers and students. It's a good question also, because in fact in Seconde we do not test the students again.
Correct.
They just go through to Seconde.
Unless they're new to us.
Unless they're new,
if
of
they're
course.
Coming
but
from
if they're coming from the section.
Yeah. So yes, we do have children who speak English at home, who probably have their parents, sing songs and reading books, etc., and who are fully in French school, integrate into the section. Absolutely. It depends what level and how much has been going on in their home environment that's contributed to, as Mr. Paris said, the grammar rules, building vocabulary, etc. But absolutely, in fact, having English at home is a great advantage. But it is not, the scenario is not necessarily the same for everybody, which is really what's exciting about the diversity in the international section. Now I have somebody who has a hand raised, and I don't know what to do with that. If you want to turn your mic on and ask a question, we can try that.
Yeah. Do you hear me okay? Yes.
Yes, yes, we can.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I have a question for the kids that integrate in the, not in sixième, not in the beginning of the cycle, like in troisième. It's for our second daughter. How
Okay.
many kids do you have in troisième at La Cantini? This is my first question. And the second
Okay.
question, we already have a kid in troisième that joined this year. Is there a need to do an application for the lycée, or it's an automatic move to the lycée?
So
not
it's not automatic, but it's based on the student's progress in troisième and the teacher's recommendation to go into seconde. But
Okay.
there's not a second test.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not another test, and it's also, so we ask families to make that
Confirm.
decision and
Let us know.
let
Yes.
us know exactly based on their conversation with the teacher whether they would like to pursue or not. So we do ask, there's a bit of a process where we ask families to send us I think they sort of have to apply without there being a test, but they do have to apply and tell us that the first choice they have for their child is to go to the Lycée Corneille's international section.
Okay. And for my first question about the number of seats in troisième or options in troisième,
We
do you
do
have an
have room
idea?
in troisième next year at La Cantini. So much changes in terms of the numbers between now and even June, never mind September, that I couldn't give you an exact number. But I do know that Monsieur Massé, who was on earlier, the proviseur, the principal at La Cantini, has confirmed for us that there are spots in troisième next year.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good point.
Yeah.
Miss May is right, is that during the course of a year, so much can happen. You know, families, they move in, move out, etc. So it's fluctuates constantly. So we might have an idea now in November, but it might be very different in January and might move again. It's very
Okay.
difficult for us to give you set numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do want to move on. I do see questions about, what other languages are taught at the Collège and the Lycée. We have both Spanish and German at the Lycée. At the Collège level, I think it's mostly Spanish. I think most of the students, in terms of the schedule, then they have the opportunity, really, or the what fits the schedule best is for them to take the Spanish option in addition to English.
All the applications questions that
Yes.
will be answered in the next 2 slides.
Yes,
So we
we're
won't
gonna
answer
get there.
those because we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, just maybe to give them a bit more of an idea as to the families we have currently in the
Sure.
program.
Yeah.
So definitely in primary, I know we're doing college, but in primary, the family, background and support are extremely important.
Yes.
That's what we see, that's what comes out of the program, is that the support of the family in primary is essential. In secondary, it becomes less so. So in secondary, we do have a bit more of a mix of students because we have students, that the child is completely bilingual because he's lived abroad for so many years, but his parents might not be. And that's okay as well. They apply, we assess their application, and then if we invite them to test, that's, I don't know if you agree with this.
Yes, absolutely. I think the profile and a young student's acquisition of language is varied. We do have, I think the latest theory about bilingualism is that there are at least 3 different types of bilinguals. We have a native bilingual who grew up speaking both languages at home. We have a composite bilingual who learns their second language through their first language. And then we have somebody like me who learns their French as an adult. And so they have this kind of after effect of putting an additional language on their brain, I guess. But the different types of bilinguals are all welcome in our programs.
Amazing, we have very varied students.
Yeah.
So we have some students that come from French families but have lived abroad. They come back, they are bilingual. We have certain families that grew up with a parent who spoke to them in English, and so although they haven't lived in the abroad.
Yeah.
Their English is strong. Then we also have those families, exceptional cases where they have two different languages or two different nationalities at home, and their common language is actually English. So it happens quite often that some of our students have more than 2 or 3 languages at home. And then lastly, what amazes me personally, and there's very few in the program, but certain students have no reason to be bilingual.
Right.
And we have one, for instance, that amazed me in 5e this year. He came into 6e, and he just, I don't know, he had a talent for English.
Yeah.
And then we have another one also in second, who was again a straight A student, extremely strong, and all of her friends were section students, and her goal was to come into the program, and she's
done so beautifully. So there are just very different profiles. But the idea is that you are able to work and study in English at the same level as you do in your native language or in French. That's the idea, is that you're able to at least handle the work at that level. It might take you longer, it might take you more working with the dictionary, it might take you more time with a tutor, but that you're able to do the work that's required as a native speaker would at that level.
Whether in French or in English.
Right.
We have certain students who are stronger in English than they are in French, and the other way around as well. So it's difficult to, they're not all at the same level. We don't have just copies of the same student.
No.
I think
we got to keep moving.
Yes, we have to keep moving. And these coming 2 slides are common to both collège and lycée applications. So that's why we put
them in the middle.
Exactly. We put them in the middle so that they concern everyone. So the admissions start on the 1st of January, 25. This is just to really put a date, because what we'd rather have and see is families apply once they're ready. There is a deadline to apply, which that's clearly you have to stick to. It's the 24th of February. But what's very important is that you gather all the information, all the documents. There's a list of we'll see afterwards, but there's a list of documents that you need to provide, and it's important you gather all those information before you apply, because you cannot save and come back, and we prefer to see a complete application than actually families then adding documents. So please don't be anxious. All of the applications will be assessed, and also it's not a first come first serve. This is really essential. We will assess all of the applications. It's not because you will apply on the 1st of January but missing all the documents. That's not necessary at all. On the 1st of January, again, you will find on the website a form to fill out, and it's 1 form per family. You will be able to add children as you go along if you have several children. What else? So the test will take place. We have one official date for the 6e. It's the Friday 7th of March 25, and for other levels it will be on the Wednesday 12th of March. The timings will be confirmed a bit later in the year
when we know how many students we're going to have for testing, because sometimes we'll have to do them in different batches, but those dates are set. If you are abroad and you're going to stay abroad through the admissions and the testing season, the distance tests will start in March of 2025. So we do distance tests. We'll get in touch, or the families get in touch with their school.
So if in the application, it might be obvious that we are doing a distance test. Some families might want to come for those, if you're not too far, if you live in the UK, or if you don't live too far, you can, just tell us in the motivation letter that you are going to make it on the official day. If you are not, either it's obvious from the application, or just write it in the motivation letter, and we will get in touch with you, sending instructions, because the distance test will be done with your current school. That's for the written part, and then the oral part will be done over Zoom with one of our teachers. We had a question earlier, and it's it's appropriate to speak about it now. Is that for all students coming from schools that are not in the AEFE, so the French network, the Éducation nationale, will have to be tested in French and maths only once they have passed the entrance test. So the idea is not to get them to sit the French and maths if anyway they haven't passed in English. So it's in several processes, in several steps. So you will be informed maybe about, usually it's 2 weeks after the official test. We then let you know that we're inviting your child to come and sit the French and maths. The French and maths is very important that you know that it's not really, we don't base our decision on this test. It's more diagnostic. It's required by our heads of the French
because we are in
schools.
the French schools, right?
Exactly,
and both the tests are in French. The French and the maths. The maths test is not in English.
No.
And the French test is not in English, but it's French. It's for the national side.
Exactly, and it's more to be able to zoom in certain aspects that they might need to work on. So it's useful for you to know before the summer, because maybe over the summer you can focus on those areas, and it's also useful for the school to know whether they need additional support. You will see. This is a choice made by the section. It's not a choice that is common to all the schools. But in GrandChêne section international, we prefer to charge you bits by bits. So sometimes it's a bit surprising, but in fact, the idea is to not have you pay fees for everything when we might not, your child might not go through all the steps. So we ask you to pay an application fee of €105. Then once we invite you to test, we will ask you to pay again, so €50 for an official test, 110 for a distance test. And then lastly, if your child goes through again and requires a French and maths test, that's when we will ask you to pay the French and maths test. So sometimes it's surprising because we ask you to pay, every 2 weeks for some
might feel like it. Yes.
It might feel like it, but at the end of the day, it's to make sure that you're not overspending.
All right, so we're going to move on. The
Yes.
documents required. Do you want me to read this one?
No, I think I'm fine.
Okay.
So again, I think we've mentioned most of the documents already, but there's the application form. On the application form, you will have to upload certain documents. So a motivation letter, which has to be written by the parent and in English. We are very happy to see motivation letters written by your child, but it's useful to have also one written by the parent to give us a bit more background information on the family dynamic. The handwritten work is is a work assignment given by a teacher in English.
That's been evaluated.
In English, of course. We understand that at later ages, they don't always have handwritten work anymore. So it can be typed. We prefer handwritten, but we understand that in certain schools, they don't do it anymore. So it's just to be able to assess at what level your child is working at. English school reports, French school reports, so it's current and past. And this is why usually families have to wait to apply, because you have to wait until you get those documents. Then we will ask you also to give us current English teacher's email address. We will be sending them a form to fill out. So you don't need to ask them a recommendation letter. We asked, because we know what we're looking for. We know what are the criteria we would like to hear about. So no need for recommendation letters. And we start assessing the applications. Once the application fees are paid, we get notified.
And I'm thinking, as I see this list for that family, you emailed a question, or you put in the chat a question about, well, if your children are speaking English at home, but they're fully in French school, they haven't done academic English. Obviously, you won't have English school reports or an English teacher's email, but in your motivation letter, that would be included, that's your family context, and that's how they learned their English, that they've spent, holidays with family abroad, or that you've continued to maintain English at home on a regular basis with, you know, lots of input and reading, etc. So don't panic if you can't tick that box, that's okay. It's mostly those are the things that we're looking for on a classic application.
Yes, I've got a question concerning those French and math tests.
Yes.
They concern students who might be either abroad in international schools or local schools abroad, and they concern also students that are currently in hors contrat schools in France.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Then we've heard about the lycée. I hope, I don't know if people have joined us, but the lycée, we had our principal from the lycée here earlier. And when we send the video, the recording of tonight's webinar, you can hear her speak about her school. But we have, as you can see, 21 students in seconde, 8 in première, and 14 in terminale for this year. And these are some pictures of the campus. The open day is January 18th, and all are invited to come and see the lycée, the site, and the dynamic that happens at the open day, because it's quite exciting. You're going to answer a question?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll just answer this question because
Yes.
it's in direct link
Go
with
for it.
another answer. For students who are following the CNED abroad, you're perfectly right to ask. No, there is no French and math test. Well, there's no French test or math test, depending on what subject they're following.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Para, are you still with us? Maybe yes, maybe no. Yay!
Yes.
All right, can you talk a little bit about the literature program in particular, if you don't mind kind of narrating this slide, and then we'll let you go.
Absolutely. Was it this slide or is there a slide after this?
Oh, maybe there's one after. Maybe I've lost. Oh, yes.
I
Okay.
remember because I've looked, yeah.
You did. Okay. Yeah. So I can start us off and explain that in seconde, the students have 4 hours of English language and literature and 2 hours of history geography. This is in addition to the 3 hours of history geography that they have in French. So a little bit more weight academically in the lycée program. In addition to the spécialité, the options that the students choose now in première and terminale. And we are not officially on an option, we're kind of a parallel offer. So while they're doing their French regular coursework, they also have the academic coursework for the section. That said, our literature classes, they don't also have to take national English classes. So there is some replacement for the LVA of English for them. And then from première, so in première and terminale, the students have 4 hours of history and geography, and we team teach that. There's a teacher who does 2 hours of history for the premières and 2 hours of history or 2 hours of geography for the terminales. And then I teach 2 hours of geography for première and 2 hours of history for terminale. So in fact, they kind of multiply their teachers for the section as well. Can I let you talk about the exams?
Absolutely. Well, we'll start with the IGCSE exams, which are the international exams recognized or given by Cambridge. They allow students, as well as anyone taking the exam, to provide, in a sense, proof of their English proficiency and ability to work with the English language to a certain capacity. And I would say, I believe we have a 100% success rate with the IGCSE exam for students who finish seconde. So, and then following that in première and terminale, we start to look at the international bac, which has a focus, of course, on literature. And I could talk a bit more on that specifically with the next slide too, because we have the different kind of material we go over for the international bac.
Okay.
But I can talk about these co-curricular activities as well, because we do school trips, of course. Just recently, I went with terminale students to London, and we saw the play Antony and Cleopatra at the Globe Theatre, which was an incredible experience. I I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure they did too, but I have to say it was really special experience to see a play that they've been studying for 2 years put on in front of them in the style that Shakespeare intended. Not only will it be something that they remember for the rest of their lives, but it'll also inform their preparation for the exams to see the dramatic effect and the real purpose of drama is to have it on stage. Also, I see the picture down there for Model United Nations. So I am the coach for Model United Nations. We meet once a week. And the idea is to essentially simulate the United Nations and working together as delegates from different countries and trying to pass different movements, different acts, different
Resolutions.
thank you, the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I know.
Resolutions or agreements based on compromise and debate. Recently, last year, we went to Lyon for a conference, and it was a huge success. The students had an amazing time. They met tons of new people, and it was really nice to see all their hard work pay off. So it's something that we offer that I think is really special.
Yeah, it's a great experience. So can I let you do this one? Because then I know that we have a student who's joined us, and I want to give him time to talk as well.
So as I stated before, Seconde is really the year where we start to focus even more so on the IGCSE exams and the type of writing that we need to do for that. Because unlike the international bac, which I will talk about in a minute, there's really a heavy focus on the analytical side of literature, specifically on looking at specific word choice and deciphering their meaning and purpose. We look at different novels. For example, in Seconde, we're looking at Rebecca as well as a collection of poems. And what else are we looking at? We are looking at Streetcar Named Desire. And we take our time to look at the language used through extracts, through examples of the Ted Hughes poems or things like that. And really, we take time practicing writing for those exams. So we spend one class a week practicing writing in a timed environment, which is demanding but super useful for the students as they prepare for the exam. As we move on to Première and Terminale, we focus less on perhaps we still analyze, of course, but it's more about looking at literature at a greater scale. We're instead of looking at the fine mechanics and details of individual works, we start to focus on literature as a movement. For example, one of the parts of the literature exam for the bac is the synoptic topic, which is a focus on a literary movement and how that is found throughout different pieces of literature. Right now, I'm teaching Gothic literature for the synoptic topic. So we look at a selection of Gothic poetry as well as Dracula and Frankenstein. And although we still, again, talk about language, we take a step back and we look at the general qualities or general principles of Gothic literature as well as not naturalism, sorry, but Romanticism, and we see how that is used within those different works. The same in Première as we start to prepare. We also look at a Shakespeare work every year. In Terminale this year, we are looking at Antony and Cleopatra, of course. And in Première, I believe they're looking at Hamlet. And so we learn to study the play not only as a literary work, but as well as a dramatic work. So we don't just look at the literature, but we look at the effect of that literature on the stage. And finally, there's the written portion of the bac exam, which we look at John Keats' poems, as well as A Room with a View in Terminale. And they started that in Première. And that's really a focus on, I would say, the more traditional essay writing that you might see in a high school English class, where they write a thesis statement, they have an introduction, they have a conclusion. So a lot of the focus is on essay writing in, I would say, the classical style. And this is all to prepare for the bac at the end of the year, which we have a fantastic success rate. 100% everyone passes from so far.
They have to keep working. We have a student listening. We have to tell them that.
Yes. Of course, you have to. We only succeed because we work so hard throughout the year.
Exactly. It's not given away. No.
Exactly. So,
Thank you.
Very briefly, that is the English program in a nutshell for the lycée.
Yes,
Super.
thank
Thank
you
so much.
so much. I think, can we let Mr.
I
Parra
think
go?
so, yeah.
If you
I
want
can
to
eat
stay and
dinner?
listen, if you want to stay and listen to Hans, we're going to ask Hans
Oh,
to
is it
please.
Hans?
It is Hans.
Hi,
Hans,
Hans.
can you turn on your mic?
I taught him last year.
Hello.
Hello, you got to speak up a little bit.
Is it better now?
Yes, thank you for joining us. Hans is one of our
No problem.
students in Premiere this year, and he agreed to join us this evening and kind of speak a little bit, if you don't mind, about what why what you appreciate about the section and why you've decided to add that to your lycée experience.
Okay. Firstly, so my name is Hans. I'm a student who joined in 4e, and
Yeah.
so it's been 3 years that, a little more than 3 years that I've been in the section. So I passed the GCSE the last year, and yeah, and I'm currently doing the BFI. I joined the section at the beginning because I came to France from India, and I used to be part of a bilingual school there as well, and I was doing the IGCSE there, so I wanted to continue the same level of English, which is why I joined the section. In terms of what this section has helped me with, it's of course having this connection in English, because while I do speak with my parents at home in English, having friends at school to speak with helps you continue and like stay on a certain level, certain like a rigorousness, because you speak with them every day. It's becomes a habit. And also another thing that the section has helped me is to make friends, because I remember that most of my early friends were from the section, because I'd come here from India, so I didn't know anyone else. And through the section, because we aren't a huge number of students in the section, apart from maybe the Saguns this year, but so you know each other fairly well, and so we're all friends with each other.
Yeah, there's a good camaraderie. It's true.
Yeah,
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Yes.
Is the section a lot more work?
Well, this it is I believe 3 more hours than my friends who don't do the section. So it isn't substantial, because at least in Premiere, I don't have that many, because we have our specialties and all of that, so it's fairly balanced even with the section. And I do have slightly longer hours than my friends who are not in the section, but in terms of work, I don't think it's that much work, especially compared to my other specialties. So I have maths and physics, which are pretty big and need a lot of work at home. So I would say from that perspective, I spend less time on English doing homework or revising or going through my lessons at home than I do for the French section. So
Oh, interesting. I'll have to work on that. More homework. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, maybe about some of the trips or the other activities?
Yes. So yeah. So this year we did go on a trip to London. It was fantastic. I believe for this group it was their first trip, so it was quite fun. We so we didn't go to the Globe Theatre, unlike the Terminals. We went and watched The Lion King for a play, and it was quite fun. And I also last year did MUN. So like Mr. Bharat was talking about, it was quite fun, and I feel it helps you build your speaking, like your elocution capacities, competences. It gives you a certain confidence to speak in front of an audience, and I feel that's quite helpful.
Yeah, great. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to keep going because we've been here since about, and some of the parents and families as well, since about 7:30. So we're going to try to wrap up here. You're welcome to stay on, Hans, if you want. And Mr. Para, I don't know if you've stayed on or signed off.
I'm still
but we're
here,
going to.
but
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
heading out now. So thank you.
Okay. Thank
To
you.
both.
Thanks to both of you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, Mrs. May, I also think I have to go now.
Okay,
Thank you,
good.
Hans.
I'll see you on Friday.
Yes.
So the history and geography program from Seconde de Terminale, I'll go pretty quickly here. The key skills, we're again building on the skills that started in Collège. We do a little bit more in terms of actual case studies. So students get into, for example, if they're going to study transnational corporations, they actually choose a case study and they go into detail and do the research to understand that case study in depth. We continue with source work with both history and geography. We introduce historiography, which is not the combination of history and geography, but the study of history. And that helps students with different perspectives, which evidence is used to back up different perspectives and make an argument about why things happened the way they did in the past. And the emphasis is on essay writing. The content is also defined by the French national program. And so our work is shared with our national teachers. So there's a lot of collaboration and close communication with them. The emphasis is on global perspectives. So we take a real global worldview with the emphasis in history and geography at the lycée. And I had another thought, and now I've lost it. It might come back to me on the programs. And our focus then, we also have in Première and Terminale, an individual research project. This is new to the BFI since last year. And students found it very satisfying and very much something that they were able to succeed in. It's an interdisciplinary approach, and it's their kind of, I call it kind of show and tell for high school students. They choose a topic, a subject that they are interested in that relates to British society and culture, and they do in-depth research on that, and then they present. And so the exam itself is simply an oral, I say, it's an oral in front of two examiners, and then they are asked questions about their research, about the process, etc. But it really prepares them for post-bac studies and for the requirements of individual work that has to take place for university. So the BFI exams at the end of Terminale, there's both a written and an oral exam in language and literature and history and geography. And what that means is history and geography are taken together. So there's a written exam and an oral exam for the discipline of history and geography. And then we have the World Knowledge Research Project that students do individually, but they do have support for that. We have an hour every other week with their world knowledge, with their research project guide or teacher. And that's an oral exam, and this validates the C1, C2 language level by the end of Terminale. So we have, as Mr. Para mentioned, exceptional IGCSE results, 100% success rate over the past several years. Our BFI results are also very good, 100% success rate. And we have students, the entire class, gets through the marathon that is the back exams now at this point. Post-bac destinations, and I'm going just a little quickly so that we don't keep this recording going on too long. But our recent post-bac destinations include competitive prépas, universities that also require applications and are selective here in France, as well as schools abroad. We have a number of students who attend schools in the UK, fewer who attend school in the United States or in Canada, but it's still possible if the students choose to. More and more students are attending schools in the Netherlands. That's become a popular international destination for schools or for programs that are in English. And then recently we have an interest as well in schools in Singapore for various reasons. So university studies, I think what's important to mention, and we can follow up if you have specific questions, Mrs. Sokan and myself are available. But mostly I think the post-bac destinations coming from the BFI, from the section, the international section programs at the lycée level, allows students really to have choice. Maybe too many for young 17 or 18-year-olds, but our students are often accepted because of their strong academic background and their language abilities and their motivation, their experiences, and they can kind of choose and do whatever they want. If they want to go to international business, if they want to go into computer science, engineering, literature, creative writing degrees, etc. So our students are very well qualified for the post-bac curriculum that they choose. And I made it to the end. How about that? Thank you. So let me see. I've got a question. IGCSE exams. We currently offer the IGCSE exam in English language and literature, not in history geography, because we simply don't have enough time. We don't have enough time in the school schedule to follow the French program as well as the history geography IGCSE. So since we follow the French national program in our own BFI way, we don't do the IGCSE exams in history geography. There is the option through an online offer to do the math IGCSE. And we have a couple of students that do that every year. So that is an option, but it's an online program over 16 weeks, I think. But we do have some students that pursue that depending on their post-bac interests. We are currently really open to your questions, I would say.
That's really the end of the presentation.
This is pretty much where we're at. Exactly. I think you've heard about the exams we offer, the success rate, the level, English level that we're looking for, the application process.
So, I'm sorry, we didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a question.
UCAS. Good point. That's why that post-bac slide was in there. So yes, we do have an account or a status, password, etc. with UCAS, and we can help students with those applications abroad. We can't help maybe as much as we would like. We have had students in the past, families, who have gone through support agencies or university application services because it has become so heavy. But we as teachers do our job with helping students know what their options are. We have a subscription to Unifrog, which also helps our pupils to have access to the different kind of personal inventory, looking for what are some options for your post-bac studies, what are you suited for, what are you interested in. And I think one of our main benefits for students is that we have a good connection with our alumni, and we put students in contact with those who have gone through a similar path, a similar curriculum or program as our current students might be interested in. I have a couple students this year who are interested in chemical engineering, and we have a student last year who went to Exeter, I think, for chemical engineering, and so I put them in touch. And really, they listen to each other much more than they listen to, to their teachers or their parents, perhaps, on certain issues, But there is support for UCAS, yes.
I think we've covered probably all the questions.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's
thank
it
you.
really. Thank you so much for following, the webinar. It was
Yes,
quite
thank
long.
you. Yes.
Yeah, we'll stop the recording. It will be available tomorrow. We'll just send it to everyone and contact us if you have any
If needed.
questions.
And if we've forgotten anything or something has missed our filter, please let us know. Because we're more than happy to dialogue with
and we'll make sure to
applicants.
add it in next year in our webinar as well.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.